Welcome to Season 6 of the Hey Girl podcast with your host and my mom, Bethany Needham. This season, we get to hear stories from guests who are running their race in their place right where God has them. We hope that these stories will encourage and inspire you to do the same. If you want more information or to connect with my mom, go follow us on Instagram at HeyGirlGram, friend us on Facebook at HeyGirlPod, or even better, head to BethanyNeedham.com and sign up for our email list so that you can get all the Hey Girl tea. All right, it's time to grab a cup of coffee or your favorite seltzer. Here's my mom.
Hey girls, and welcome back to another week of the Hey Girl podcast. This week, we sit down with my real life friend and really more like a little sister, Katrina Stevens. Y'all, she's been on the podcast before. We're getting an update on her life. So as always, if you didn't hear part 1 with Katrina, go back and listen. I'll make sure to link that first episode in our show notes. But today we sit down with Katrina in this season of life where she's a mama, she's doing the homeschool thing, she's involved in mom's ministry, and her husband is pastoring at a church. It is such a great conversation. And as always, Katrina is just a joy to sit down with. She's the kind of friend that you need in your life where you just feel hilarious because she laughs at everything. It's fantastic. Before we get to this episode, though, I just want to let you all know that Hey Girl Fitness is launched. And I'll be honest, this is maybe one of the scariest things I've ever set out to do. But I am one day at a time showing up for this brand new business because I feel so passionate about women and their health, and especially helping women who may just be stuck because they're overwhelmed or afraid of what they don't know. Like, I don't even know where to get started, or stuck because they just need maybe some new inspiration and fresh workout ideas. Or maybe they're just looking for a community of other women who can kind of be their virtual gym buddies, cheering them on and encouraging them along the way. Whatever it may be, Hey Girl Fitness is here for it. And I just love the opportunity to serve in whatever way I can, because for me, first as a young mom who struggled so much with postpartum depression, with just really being at an unhealthy place with my weight, with my health, all the things. My mental health was just a complete wreck after I had had my kids. And for me, stepping into fitness and learning through an incredible trainer and all of the things was so helpful for me to regain my energy, to find just more stability in my mental health. And I would love the opportunity to come alongside other mamas, other women who maybe are in that same space and encourage you, equip you, whatever you need to get you started or to encourage you along the way. So if you're interested, head on over to BethanyNeedham.com. You know what? I'm going to cut out the if you're interested. This is me just saying, girlfriend, head on over to my website, BethanyNeedham.com. You can find a link for Hey Girl Fitness. Come and join us. I mean, there's no contract. So try it for a while and see how it goes. If you hate it or you dislike me as your trainer, that's cool. We can still be friends. It's fine. I would love to see you over there though. So BethanyNeedham.com. Check out Hey Girl Fitness and sign up today. All right, get ready, y'all. Katrina is in the house and I am here for it. Oh man, friends, it's a special week because I get to have my real life friend, Katrina Stevens, on the podcast. And I just feel like we should stay out the gate. This is likely going to have some rabbit trails. There is going to be an enormous amount of giggling, laughing. We just apologize in advance. So maybe,
But not
yeah,
apologize. Sorry, not sorry.
that's kind of how I'm feeling.
Yeah.
Sorry, not sorry. And when it's all said and done, we might be the only ones that like this episode. But
Who's that? And my mom.
yes, and our moms. Love our
Yeah.
moms. Hi, Melissa and Wanda.
Shout out.
Shout out. Oh, so Trina, this is not your first time on Hey Girl, which, yay,
Yeah.
welcome back. And
Ew.
I say that because if people are listening now, they didn't get to listen before, it's worth going back to hear your other episode. We go a lot in that episode into like early on years with Trina and just some incredible things that God did in your life. But as
Mhm.
I was thinking about this interview, I thought it was really interesting that when I reached out to you, your response, if you remember, was basically, "Hey, I'm willing, but my life's really boring now." Like, I don't really.
Everything.
And that was such a great response because I feel like this is such a great time to do an interview for Hey Girl because I think too many of us, we kind of forget that every season, whether it's quote unquote boring or exciting or whatever, that none of it is just in between, or some people talk about, it's not an appetizer, everything's the main course kind of thing. Like, God has still called you to a race. And right now it looks different than it did before, but it doesn't matter any less. Like, it still matters. So, that being said, are you ready? Because I'm going to bring you on a ride through your own life.
Oh my gosh, this is better than therapy. Let's go.
So I want, without spending too much time on it, I just want to sort of give people a picture that your story has brought you a lot of different places, starting in California. Why don't you, just for a glimpse for people, walk us through hey, born in California, here are all the different places that my race has brought me so
Yeah.
far.
So, bird's eye view, the quick picture. I was born and raised in Southern California where I met my husband, who is a stud. But when we first met, I did not think so. So we met. Long story short, we ended up married. And when we were married, I had told him that we were going to be missionaries, that if he was going to date me, he was going to marry me, we were going to be missionaries. And 9 months into our marriage, I was like, let's annul this. It's terrible. And instead, we moved to Mexico to be missionaries. Long story there, but it was awesome. We ended up in Mexico, but that wasn't really where my heart was. My heart was to end up in Africa. I had taken a couple short-term missions trips to Africa, to Uganda, Africa. And so I wanted to end up in Uganda, Africa. And so we ended up in Mexico. And we were in Mexico for 3 years. And we were working with Youth with a Mission, YWAM, and we were building houses and we were leading teams. And then we got my dream opportunity to lead teams from Mexico, lead these young Mexicans to Uganda, Africa, to start building houses. And right at that time, God was like, nope. And he planted us in Massachusetts. And I think that was really because he just wanted me closer to Bethany, but also because he wanted me to do a real refining process as well in my relationship with him.
I thought you were going to say
And
that your dream opportunity in Mexico was that you met me in Mexico.
that was just the dream bonus.
Perfect.
The dream bonus was that I met Bethany. So I moved to Massachusetts to be closer to her, but also because my husband went to seminary there. So we ended up spending 4 years and 2 kids in. I'd originally told my husband, Zach, that if we were going to move back into the United States, that he would just promise me that we wouldn't stay there. I didn't want the white picket fence. I didn't want the mom van. I wanted to go back into missions. And so now we're in Connecticut, which has been a whole other journey.
Isn't there a slogan, something like Connecticut, where white picket fences are?
And mom vans
Yes.
thrive. And I do have a mom van. I don't have a fence, but I have the mom van.
It's a slippery slope. It's only a matter of time.
I've become that yuppie family.
Oh,
a long journey, spiritual journey in all of that, going from California to Mexico to Massachusetts to Connecticut, and it's been humbling, it's been good, but it's been hard.
Hmm.
Um,
I appreciate it a lot when you just your honesty in that sense of I don't really know what to share about this season. And I have to say, whenever I think about you, or if somebody like we have a mutual friend or acquaintance is like, oh, I know Katrina, the thing that I usually will always describe about when I think of Katrina, I think of, other than obviously gorgeous and
Thank
yes.
you.
And if you want to feel super funny, hang out with her because she'll just laugh at you all day long.
I'll just
Yes.
laugh.
But truthfully, because I now have gotten to have this seat or this, I guess, the blessing of watching you and Zach and your family from Mexico to Africa to Massachusetts and now to Connecticut is that everywhere that you go, you are so intentional about building community in that place and just being very present in that space. And that's a big deal when you think about the kind of culture dynamics, like in just you have shifted from, even though Mexico and Africa are both, we would call them mission fields, they're very different cultures. And to be able to make those, I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying that is something that from an outside, from a friend's perspective, I just really appreciate about how you show up in your race, no matter where God has sent you so
Thank
far.
you. That's really encouraging because I feel like I'm constantly challenged being I I was saying this the other day to somebody that I feel like in my missionally living for God, trying to live eternity perspective, trying to live intentional for Christ and making sure that I'm not just walking the race but truly running the race and running it as well as I can. I feel
Mm,
like God has constantly just knocked me down a peg. I told them it's like he's
mm.
Gideon armying me. I'm turning that into a verb. Yes.
Perfect. I
Where
love
I
it.
just constantly feel like, but God, how are you going to use me here? But God, how are you going to use me here? When it feels like, I went from Mexico and Africa, which definitely felt more mission field, to then Massachusetts, which I was still able to say, well, technically, this is an unreached people group where I lived. It was technically an unreached people group. So I was like, okay, well, I can still be missional. And now I'm in Connecticut and it's still New England, but I live in a military community. And so we have a lot of people here that are from the South or from elsewhere that this is a very Christian community again. And so I just feel like God has time and time again just shown me one that I have an issue with pride, obviously. And so he's just like, nope, I'm gonna be the one working and moving. It's not gonna be you in a certain place. So apparently he thinks I need to be knocked down a couple pegs, but also just that there's not a better mission field. That if he calls you to a place that you have to make that your mission field. And so, yeah, being intentional in that. But it's hard when you read other people's books. Like, I was reading Jenny Allen's Anything or reading any of Francis Chan's books or any of these other people who are just like, don't be too comfortable. And I'm like, but God keeps bringing me to more and more comfortable. I didn't want comfortable.
I think it's interesting, though, even you sharing your story, that I think in a lot of ways, when we read those stories, we get this sort of, we define what uncomfortable is. But when I look at you, I almost think where you're at is so much more uncomfortable than you in Africa barefoot standing outside a mud hut. And I mean, it's such a, I feel like that's often how God works is we get these ideas in our head of what, I feel like we're obviously different in age. Let's not get into details in that, but
By a couple of years, it's not Not much.
But you grow up and there was this idea that that the true sold out for Jesus was literally sell everything you have, move to Africa and adopt orphans, and that's it. And that's not a wrong, I'm literally getting ready to interview Katie who has done that before, but that doesn't mean that that is what everyone, if everybody sells everything they have and goes to Africa, then who is in Connecticut to tell people about Jesus? And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I think one of the reasons I really wanted to have you back on, one is because I've always appreciated this about you. I know because I'm your friend, I know it's not easy. This isn't an easy road that you've chosen, but I actually thought it would be beneficial for us to take some time to talk about what does your race look like right now, and not to fear or feel like we have to frilly up the mundane. Like,
Mhm.
this is life, this is ministry, this is what God's called you to. What does that look like? Because I think last time we left off, you had 2 kids.
Yes. Yeah. I just
Yes.
given birth to Sai.
And now you have doubled.
Hmm.
They just keep coming.
Right? Now I'm on number 4.
So why don't we'll rewind a tiny bit, because let's just come back to you launched into Connecticut. Tell us a little bit about what brought you to Connecticut and what that ministry kind of looks like for you guys.
So, what brought us into Connecticut was while my husband was in seminary, he really did just get such a heart for New England. And he thrives in the intellectual. And living up here, it was a bunch of intellectuals that he was surrounded by. And he loved that. He loves that Christianity is not a check your brains at the door kind of faith. It's a faith that really does make sense to our worldview.
Mm.
And he likes dissecting all of that. And so, anyhow, when he was offered a position to stay here, he was offered a position in Massachusetts, and then he was offered this position in Connecticut. And just as we were praying through it and just going through that whole process, he really felt called to an associate pastor position here in Connecticut. And it's been amazing. I think the hard part is that I see how God is really like growing Zach's ministry so much and just making him thrive exactly where we're called. And so,
Mm.
knowing obviously that I'm called to my husband and to my kids, I got to stay here. And so
She's
God
like,
is
I ain't going nowhere.
right. I'm stuck in the best way though, because I really do have a heart now for Connecticut. So I was brought here because my husband and his heart for Groton Bible Chapel. But when I got here, being in the season of life I was in, I just felt like, you know what, I'm going to get really plugged in and involved with the moms ministry at our church.
Yeah.
And so I ended up taking over that because that's what I do. I come in and I just take over.
I'll take that.
Oh, yeah. Mom's ministry. And it was amazing because I saw that ministry during COVID really just be a lifeline for moms who already felt isolated in a season of
Mm.
motherhood, to then now be just a lifeline to so many moms. And from that came a book club at my house. And so I do a book club, and we do a whole bunch of things just at my house now. We always say our house is it's a mini church. And so the doors are constantly open. They're always unlocked, come in whenever. And so we have a revolving door. But back to your question about why we ended up in Connecticut, it was because of my husband and getting his position here.
I actually love that testimony of, going to Connecticut for you in a lot of ways was just obedience. It wasn't necessarily, obviously you're called to your husband, but for you it was, okay, well, I'm going to obey and follow. And how God has, since you've arrived there, kind of shown you and opened up these doors for ministry for you. And what I have visited there a few times now. Andy and I have had the opportunity to we love the church that you serve in, love the people there. And the thing that I appreciate is getting to see you sort of in that element and the relationships that you've built and the friendships you've built. And now you have 4 children.
4 children. Yes.
Crazy.
And going. We're hoping to get
And
pregnant any day. It's about that time. My
it's
daughter's
about
almost 1, so time for number 5.
I love it. And so 4 kids,
Yes.
homeschool mom.
Yes. Started homeschooling 2 years ago when my oldest was in kindergarten. But I'll be honest, I'm not passionate about homeschooling. My husband is. So I can't take a lot of credit for homeschooling. My husband has a really good rhythm of getting up in the morning with the boys and starting homeschool so that by the time I come out of my room having read my Bible, done my time with Jesus, I come out at 7:15 and he'll have them dressed and already eaten and they have their homeschool basically done. I'll only have to do like 1 or 2 things. So I can't take credit for homeschooling.
You're basically the recess monitor.
Exactly. I keep them alive the rest of the day.
Okay, truthfully, I bring this up because I know this because we've had this conversation. And I know that we have listeners that homeschool. You are the first of my friends. Actually, that's not true. I think I have one other friend that is true, where the husbands are very actively involved in the schooling. And I just love to see different pictures of what this looks like. And so I'm glad you shared it because I love just that what people think homeschooling is, and it looks different for everyone. So I appreciate, and how cool. Like, let's give a shout out to Zach for a second because, yeah,
He's so
wakes up. But I appreciate so much that it's not this, well, Zach is like, well, I go to the church and you school the children.
right.
And just that you have this shared. And first of all, I just want to be clear. This is not because you don't have involvement with the kids.
Like I said, I'm with them all day long. So I'm
Yeah.
keeping them alive.
And 4 of them, that's a big deal.
Yes.
So then give me sort of a picture of, for moms who are listening, maybe they're in this. So first of all, ages, we obviously said that youngest, almost 1, all the way up to how old is Thay now?
Faye is 7. He's 7 now. I keep him alive, okay? I don't calculate the years. He's alive.
You should calculate the years. That's like I've kept him alive for this long.
7
Yay!
years. 7 years.
So 1 to 7, all still, you're in that young kid
Yeah.
stage of life. What does it look like for you in terms of running your race? You mentioned that morning time, you get to spend time with Jesus, all of those things. That obviously is not everybody's situation. They don't all have that opportunity to, their husband to be able to take the
Right.
kids so they can do that. But let's go past that moment into your day. What does it look like for you in this season of shepherding young kids? You're involved in mom's ministry.
Mhm.
You have a husband who's on staff at a church, which
Mhm.
anyone who's been in that kind of season of life knows that that brings its own sort of busyness and difference in schedules. So what
Yeah.
does it look like for you right now?
So for me, it looks like a lot of scheduled juggling. I mean, I was always warned about this when I was just a mom of littles, that all of a sudden, when they start getting their own schedules, that all of a sudden you are just juggling all of these schedules. So, like, I have one of my kids, my 2-year-old, my 2.5-year-old, he'll be actually 3 in a month. He has a speech issue, so he doesn't speak yet. And so we've got speech therapy appointments. My 5-year-old is currently in a 3-day-a-week program at preschool, so I'm constantly juggling his schedule. And then obviously having a 1-year-old, it comes with all those different doctor's appointments and all of that. So scheduling her stuff, and then my oldest being 7 with his school thing. He was in a co-op earlier this year, so I was juggling that. And then all the church activities that we are all involved in between Awana and Bible study and that. So it's a lot of juggling. But
Hmm.
luckily, because I am so involved in the church, I have an incredible church community. And so I have that village that everyone tells you you're going to need a village. So, I have
Yeah.
I have a lady who she retired and she came up to Zach. I'd never met her before and she goes, "Zach, I'm going to come once a week so your wife can go grocery shopping by herself. So, you tell her to pick the day and the 2 hours and I'm going to be with the kids so she can go grocery shopping by herself." And I have so many homeschool moms that during speech I can come up and be like, "They doesn't want to come to speech with his 2-year-old sibling, and so can I drop him off with you?" And so it's a lot of juggling different schedules, and getting from here to there. But because I have that village, it's really
Yeah.
it's it's easier. Um, and it's not something that I thought was going to be as hard as I was warned about when people were like, "Oh, just wait," because I have that village of people that I can call up and say, "Could I drop him off?" or "Could you pick him up?" And I have a carpool situation with my preschooler, and so it's been really nice to have that village.
I've appreciated so much the number of conversations I've gotten to have through Hey Girl of communities, church communities
Mhm.
showing up
Yeah,
in like a boss way because
yeah,
I think for a long time, I don't know, the church was just getting a bad rap on this. Like people just feeling like they weren't being the church. They weren't,
yeah.
there wasn't really great community. Obviously, we went through 2020 and all of that where couldn't meet together and whatever. But I have heard more and more stories of how within the church, and whether it's through small group or the greater church body, whatever it is, people really like loving one another
Oh
in
yeah,
a tangible like way,
oh
and
yeah.
it's just it's so encouraging for me. And man, it just in some ways instills my hope that I'm like, yay.
Yes. Well, isn't that what
We're
it tells us to do though? In like, especially for women, I look at the Titus model and how, older women are supposed to be pouring into younger women. And on top of that lady who's retired and watches my kids, like I have another lady who just she comes in and I have 2 hour quiet time in the middle of the day. My kids don't, well, my two olders don't nap anymore, but because my two younger still nap, we do 2 hour quiet time. So from 12 to 2, my kids have to stay in their room. They can play with Legos. I put on podcasts for them to listen to, or the Pin It app so they can listen to audiobooks. And so during that 2 hours, anyhow, that's a lot of me time. I reset my house. I get it ready for the next time. Or if I haven't gotten to really like prayer journal because I woke up too late in the morning, then I can do my prayer journaling then. But one of those times on Thursday, I have an older woman who comes in and she spends the second hour from 1 to 2 just mentoring me, just talking to me. And I can just we don't have anything in particular. Well, right now we started going through a book, but I can just talk to her about anything. And then the second
Yeah.
hour, my kids come out and she reads to them, or she colors with them, or she feeds my baby. She'll sit at the table and feed my baby while I get dinner started. And so I see that Titus ministry because then I'm able to do that to a high school girl that comes on Wednesday afternoons. And so it's just like that continual model that we're called to do. Like you said, that's what the church is supposed to be doing.
I love that. And on a practical side, I think you sharing about that 2 hour break for moms who maybe have never considered this before. I don't remember who told me or shared that with me as a young mom, but that was something that we had in place when the kids were little too, was 2 hours. And my kids napped for a long time. So sometimes it would stretch because they just were sleepers. But it really does give you this window in the day of just quiet, sort of reset. And I love that idea of utilizing that for mentorship, for pouring into others, whatever that looks like. Just on a practical side, that's such a great idea for young moms. And like you said, they don't have to nap, like podcasts and audio, like it's good for kids to learn to occupy themselves, to spend time alone. Like that's not a bad practice for them.
Oh yeah. And the creations that they come up with because of it, they build these amazing Lego creations, or they had gotten these little, electronic piggy banks one time. They were like little safes, but one of them had stopped working. So I walked in and they had taken the whole thing apart and they were talking about how they were going to use the motherboard to like add to their creation. I just thought, this is awesome because I wasn't a part of this at all, but the creativity that came out of it was really encouraging. I mean, it's for my sanity, so it's a selfish reason I started it, but I'm like, hey, this is this is actually a good thing.
I just have this image of your kids, like Zach does the homeschooling in the morning, and then you send them to their rooms so they can lead their own robotics club like for 2 hours.
I don't see anything wrong with this.
I think it's genius.
Right? I'm killing
So, yeah, seriously, winning.
it.
So, I have a couple of really like just practical things that I would love to know for this season of life. What is something right now that is feeding your mind in terms of, are you a reader? Are you audiobook? Is there a book right now that you're like, oh my word, I love, like, this has been
Oh,
incredible?
gosh, I have so many because I do that book club. I have to admit, I'm the kind of person that I start a book, and when I get the gist of it about halfway through, I give up. And I tell everyone about the book, and I'm like, this was such an amazing book. And I pray that the second half wasn't terrible because I'm, I'm not a committed reader unless it's fiction.
Yeah, you've done this to me before. The second half is not always great, Trina.
I'm sorry for all those books I've recommended. So I started book club because one, I wanted it to be moms who were iron sharpening iron. So we go through spiritual formation books together so that I'll have to finish the book. Because if I'm reading it with others, I have to finish.
Good accountability.
Yes, it's great accountability. And I love it because we meet at my house after my kids go down, so I don't have to worry about childcare. My husband works late on Tuesday night, so it works out well where he can just go. We go through about 4 books a year, and I love that. There's so many amazing books that I've gone through because of book club that I would love to recommend. But I would say the thing that's feeding me daily is the YouVersion app,
Hmm.
because again, the accountability piece. I'm doing one with my cousin right now who lives in Indiana, so we don't live anywhere close by. But on YouVersion, when you choose a reading plan and you join up with a person, you can like write little notes at the end and talk it over each of the little devotionals. So her
Yeah.
and I are going through a devotional together right now. My book club went through one as well together. And sometimes they can just be a week, sometimes they could be all year long. And so I like doing that for just day to day because when I'm doing the dishes, I can just press play and it reads it to me.
Yeah.
I have wet hands and I can still be hearing scripture. So that's really, really important. This year, we started implementing Sabbath as well. So that was another rhythm that we started getting into because my husband read the Reckless Illumination of Hurry and the Essentials of the Household or something like that.
Yep.
I read half of them and they were really good. so, so the
You
half
got
was
the
great.
gist. I love it. I've actually been doing more study on Sabbath, and
Yes.
it's a worthy study for anyone right now.
Oh,
I
yes.
think it definitely something that we have lost. Actually, Sabbath and fasting are the two that I'm studying right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, really, really good. How about as a mom of four, lots going
Yeah.
on, what are you doing to care for your physical health? Just stewarding your body right now.
Well, if I wasn't married to my husband, I probably wouldn't do anything. I was just teasing him about this the other day. During 2020, my husband got very into fitness. He's really big on you cannot separate fitness, faith, finances. They all have to go together. Like it is something that they all kind of feed into those disciplines. And so it's important to have all of those in line because your heart is going to follow all of them.
Yeah.
Um, and so he got really into fitness in 2020 and started building up his home gym, like so many, but he has not dropped it yet. I keep waiting for him to be over it. But because of that, it's something that we do now together. We'll go down, and I've had to let go of the idea that my kids are just going to watch TV during that time. We bring them downstairs with us, and they sit on the couch. And we have the Minnow app, which we put on our TV, and they can watch Christian shows on Minnow, or sometimes not even something Christian. I don't even have to make this about faith. Like sometimes it's just we put something on TV so that they'll sit there and they'll watch while we work out and lift weights. And yeah, and I was doing that throughout my pregnancy, which I really credit to having very easy pregnancies, is staying fit and active. And so he's gotten into like doing the Spartan runs. We've done some mud runs. And now my 7-year-old actually really has gotten into it as well, which is really fun to see like the good habits that he's seen he wants to copy. And so we've signed up to do a mud run next month together. So staying active, staying fit. Yeah, it's really cool because when I run with my 7-year-old, some of the conversations that we have, as we're running, I have lots of hills, and so we'll be running up hills, and he'll sit there and be motivating, like, just put your head down, one foot in front of the other. We got to keep going. We can never stop. Just listening to him say these little mantras that he's heard us say. It's cool. It's cool to see it be replicated.
It's like bringing your own little motivational speaker with you.
Exactly.
There's a guy at my gym that he talks to himself that way, like he like says motivational things to himself. But I always joke that I'm like, I like to lift next to him and pretend he's talking to me.
Yeah, you got
You're
this.
right. I can do it. Yeah, I did. He's probably like, what is wrong with her?
Why is she following me?
Yeah. Oh, well, Katrina, I, for one, am so excited for all that God is doing. And selfishly, I'm excited you're in Connecticut because you're not that far away. But it's been so fun to watch God's hand in your life and just your obedience through so many different things, like just being what we joke in 2020 that the word was pivot. Like in a lot of ways, you've made big shifts, and not in a crazy, but just a very intentional obeying God to what he's called you to do. And for what it's worth, I'm sitting here talking to you, and the thought that I had as someone who's, when I met you, you and Zach were newlyweds. And as you mentioned very early in the podcast, that was a season in your marriage that was not probably your favorite. And real talk always on Hagar, right? I lack filters. But one of the things you and I connected on is Andy and I really struggled early on in our marriage. And I thought it was actually funny that Zach reminded me so much of younger Andy that I was like, whoa, that's uncanny. And so there was this connection of, I felt like I understood at a different level some of what you were struggling with and processing and figuring out. But as I'm sitting here listening, I'm just thinking like, God, how incredibly powerful it is to hear the way you speak about your marriage and your husband and your family now. And I'm not saying that then you were in any way inappropriate, but just I can hear how far God has brought you. And I know that in my own story with my husband. And I think early on, I would have told you, okay, well, God needs to change this man if this is going to work. And not that he hasn't, obviously he's grown and changed, but in a lot of ways, I think I've grown to recognize what a gift these things, these strengths and all of these things about him are in my life, and come to appreciate the person that he is more than I did early on. Even the things that rub me that are like not like, I can look at it now and be like, oh yeah, I can see why I needed that in my life.
But like you said, even the whole, praying, oh God, change this person. But it was both of us that needed to grow. We were doing premarital counseling for somebody that my husband's gonna be marrying later this summer, and we were just joking around about how my husband now says, oh, "Yeah, I was a survivor." Like I also needed to grow so much, just
Yeah.
drawing closer to God, and I think that was the number one thing that created that pivot in our marriage was during that time. I mean, I was a Christian. I knew we were Christians, and I thought, here I am marrying this Christian, and we did it all right. We waited till we were married, and we got married in the church, and it was all right. And then all of a sudden, that first 9, 10 months, that first year of marriage, just
Yeah.
was like, God, I thought you promised if we did it right that this was going to be easier, this was going to be good. None of it was good. It was hard. But I think the pivotal moment, that change really happened when we both got on our faces before God. And I mean, Zach had some stuff that he really needed to work on, and they're now his strengths, and I see now God using them. That he's so, like I said, I love my husband. He is incredible. He's amazing, and he's doing so much for the kingdom. But it had to happen in that moment where we weren't idolizing our marriage, we weren't idolizing anything else, but that we drew close to God. And for me, it had to be that moment where God was breaking me of all of these idols that I had and drew closer to God. And now I can say, like, I love our marriage now. And I think my he's amazing. And I love being married to him. I think every day we say, at least once a day, like, I'm so glad I'm married to you, or I love being married to you, or I love our life, but during that time I was like, well, I'm a good Christian, so I can't say divorce, but we could probably still annul this. It hasn't been a year yet. We could get it annulled.
Girl, I understand it more than I wish I did, but I just knowing that journey, and we're going on 21 years into this. And similarly, I appreciate that the amount of times Andy and I are just like, man, I'm just so grateful for God's grace in keeping this, like protecting this marriage, because where we get to be now, and just like you said, not because I got better and Andy got better, but in a lot of ways that we were humbled and broken to the point that we actually could have a good marriage. And what a beautiful thing. Man, I can't wait. I know you're going to be on again, because down the road, you're going to come back and we're going to be like, all right, now what's God
7 kids
doing?
in.
So yes, this is going to be the better Duggar story. But Katrina, thank you so much for just being you and for being faithful in all of these seasons. And I know that God is using you. I know that even in this conversation, even if it's as simple as a mom being like, I never thought about being able to put my kids down for 2 hours to like, just those literally can be like life altering things for moms. Yeah. So thank you just for sharing with us today. I appreciate it.
I'm so glad. Thank you for having me on, Bethany.
Hey, thanks for taking the time to listen today. You make every hour spent recording in this closet worth it. Also, a huge thanks to Tony from IOK Productions for stepping in as our new editor and making all of those hours recording sound incredible. I can't wait to do this again next week. Bye, girl.